time for questions to the Minister for the Economy, and we'll start with the listed questions. Questions 1, 2 and 4 and 8 have been withdrawn, and I call Philip McGuigan.
Question 3.
The Energy Efficiency Capital Grant, EECG, was announced in early May and is open for applications across a wide range of businesses. This grant is aimed at helping businesses to reduce emissions and lower their energy demands through the installation of energy efficiency measures and renewable technologies. The application process is managed through an online digital portal that facilitates live tracking of inquiries and applications. InvestNI will report monthly on the scheme to my department to help us understand how delivery is progressing against policy objectives. Additionally, in the spirit of continual improvement, a formal review of the scheme's progress after the first 6 months and 12-month intervals thereafter have been built into the approval process, whereby all aspects of the inquiry, eligibility and application process will be reviewed and evaluated.
Gurmagad, August Arcade Dulcis, Fulcher Ash, welcome back. Minister, further to your response, can I just ask how you will ensure the scheme will promote and advance regional balance?
I thank the member, and can I just place on record also asking Cora my gratitude to my colleague Deirdre Hargey for stepping up in my absence and keeping momentum going in the department. In relation to his question about the regional balance for this scheme in particular, InvestNI will be using the portal. They will closely monitor the inquiries and applications that are being received and approved across the region. This includes capturing and tracking live data on the geographical spread by council area and industry group. This data is fundamental for my department to monitor and ensure there is a better spatial and functional distribution of the grant across the region. Furthermore, InvestNI has a dedicated marketing plan for the EECG that can be tailored to meet local business needs with a built-in flexible approach that will address any regional imbalances. A range of social media activities alongside continued engagement with key stakeholders will be monitored, and the marketing approach will be adapted to ensure all business groups are informed of the opportunities that the grant presents.
Question 4 is withdrawn. I call Liz Kimmins.
Question 5.
Minister.
Local councils are responsible for making payments under the flood relief schemes funded by the Department for the Economy. On the Enhanced Flood Scheme, there were 108 applications to the scheme across 2 councils. As of the 3rd of June, the councils have issued letters of offer to 27 businesses with a value of £1.601 million. To date, payments of £310,000 have been made to 22 businesses. Further payments will be made to businesses upon receipt of a signed letter of offer and any required documentation to evidence costs. On the Flood Hardship Scheme, there were a total of 82 applications across 4 councils, and as of the 3rd of June, hardship grants totaling £135,000 have been paid to 39 businesses.
Liz for a supplementary.
I thank the Minister for his answer, and I'm delighted to see him back in his place after his absence. Can I ask the Minister then, we've heard of the delays of Council getting some of the funding out. Can the Minister advise how much funding has the Department released to date to councils to fund the flood grant scheme?
Minister.
Well, I'm sincerely hoping, because I know, like ourselves, being a representative of one of the areas where the flooding occurred, of the urgency of getting funding out to businesses, and so I hope that the Council can make every effort to ensure that that happens quickly. I do understand that there is a complex process of assessment and verification and the need to protect public funds. £10 million was set aside for support, and we would hope to see as much of that distributed in the short time ahead as possible. And if there is anything left over in relation to that, then we certainly will examine ways in which we can continue to support businesses in the affected areas.
Call Andrew McMurray.
My answer has been answered, so I'll just withdraw, but I would just like to welcome the Minister back. It's good to see him. Thank you, Chair.
Call Justin McNulty.
That's Minister, good to see you back on your feet. I'm sure it was a big fight for you and your family, the health scare you had recently. Minister, in terms of the distribution of grants, flood grants from councils, can you tell us when issues around businesses like Lordship Design, where Loretta Gallagher has got the initial payment from council, but now they're trying to take it back off her because all of her business is not on the ground floor? Can you tell us how issues like that can be resolved in terms of distribution of those payments? Thank you,
Minister.
Well, I would like to see of course, the Council has responsibility to protect public funds and make sure funds are distributed appropriately. But I would also like to ensure that there is a degree of flexibility, and we asked at the outset, in terms of the engagement of the councils, that they have a degree of flexibility to ensure that they understand the real challenges that businesses have suffered as a consequence of that flooding incident in both Newry and Downpatrick and in other parts last October, and to ensure that they approach this in a can-do way to try and make sure businesses are supported as best they can. There is a requirement on businesses to provide evidence of loss and of damage, and I hope that businesses can quickly get down to that. But we do want to see support getting out to all of the businesses that were affected on the ground and getting out as quickly as possible.
Call Nick Matheson.
Speaker, question 6, please.
The 14 to 19 framework is a joint endeavour between my department and the Department for Education. The Minister for Education and I have met to discuss our approach to this work and our shared priorities, taking account of the current education and skills environment. As a first step, we have prioritised careers as a priority area for delivery and tasked officials from both our departments to produce a joint programme of work. This indicates our commitment to collaboration in the interests of young people. On the wider framework, the Minister for Education and I will be considering how best to prioritise the other elements of the framework, building on this collaborative approach and using insights from stakeholders on the ground.
Nick Matheson for supplementary.
Thank the Minister for his answer. The Minister will be aware that a joint committee of the Economy and Education departments met last week, and officials from both departments in that committee were clear that there would be no action plan being published in relation to that strand of work you referred to with careers advice. How can the Assembly hold your department to account if there's no targets, benchmarks, outcomes to measure your work against?
Minister.
Well, there was a report that was published, I believe, at the time the Assembly was down, and from that flowed an implementation plan, and I think that's what he's referring to. That was used for internal guidance for officials in relation to how they brought this work forward. So I understand there weren't plans to publish that, but I'm sure as the officials came before both committees that they are keen to engage and to ensure that the committees and indeed the ministers who have tasked them with this area of joint responsibility keep us up to date on progress they're making. We've been very clear that we want to begin with careers. We want to ensure that careers advice is consistent and is available to all young people in that consistent manner, and that is, if you like, almost like a pathfinder in terms of getting this joint area of work, which is very essential for young people, up and going between the two departments. So we're keen to develop this early and then to push on with the rest of that agenda, and we're very happy to keep yourselves and the committee updated as to any progress.
Colin McGrath. No? No. Okay. So, sorry, Diane Dawes. He looked for the last one. You're right, Minister.
I recognise the need to assist businesses and meet our climate change targets. My department is working with Invest NI to deliver financial support for businesses through a new scaled phase of its energy and resource efficiency programme. The main part of that programme is the Energy Efficiency Capital Grant Scheme, which was announced in early May and is open for applications across a wide range of businesses who meet the scheme criteria. I have committed £40 million to this scheme that will run until 2030, providing essential support for businesses to reduce emissions while also creating economic opportunities in the green economy.
And Dodds for supplementary.
Can I thank the Minister? It is really important that in this particular aspect of the economy, Northern Ireland does not lose its competitive edge. And it is also equally important that consumers are not left to pay for climate change targets within this House. What new programmes has the Minister bid for, and what bids have been accepted in relation to climate change targets? Minister.
Well, as I say, there is the primary focus of that is that energy efficiency support grant, and that I think there's something in the region of almost 600 applications in for that already. A couple of hundred of those have been processed already, and that's only opened in May. So you can see that there's quite a wide range of interest in that. Of course, we also are engaging with the British Government in terms of the investment zone. And we have already indicated that we would like to see the £150 million earmarked for that to be spent on green technology in the green industry. We have an opportunity here, I think, if we harness that correctly, not only to create jobs and to support innovation, creating new and better jobs, but also to work on the areas of renewable energy. Because we live in a country that is very high in resource in terms of wind and other renewable sources as well, to make sure that we get to a situation where that can actually benefit the consumers, both business and household consumers, if we can reduce our energy costs, reduce the necessity to rely on fossil fuels and an insecure demand which tends to fluctuate. So our opportunity for promoting renewable electricity but also renewable heat, then I think will benefit both consumers and businesses alike. But we have identified both the 40 million that I have dedicated our department, the 150 million, and we will continue to work on other areas, I think use of financial transaction capital to support the Net Zero Accelerator Fund as well, to try and work on all of those areas to make sure that not only can we create jobs in this area and improve jobs in this area, but we can also reduce the cost to consumers and to businesses.
Nicola Brogan for supplementary.
Darmi agad Prelas Corla August British Leishan Ira Fossa, and I'd also like to welcome the Minister back to his position. Given the funding constraints imposed upon us, can the Minister explain what he is doing to leverage alternative sources of funding for climate change schemes? Liddell.
Minister.
Well, as I mentioned, that we are working with both InvestNI and the Strategic Investment Board to develop that Net Zero Accelerator Fund. That's intended to be a catalyst for attracting and complementing private investment into the green economy. We're also working with the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities to establish the Enhanced Investment Zone, as I've said, which is about £150 million. We're in the process of co-designing that project for the North alongside the Department in London. Other funding sources available, the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund, Peace Plus and Shared Island Fund, and it's important that businesses themselves leverage this broader funding landscape with a focus on reducing emissions and growing the green economy.
Paul Colin McGrath for supplementary.
Principal Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the Minister back to his post as well. Climate change is delivering adverse weather events such as the floods that we've seen in Downpatrick. Would the Minister be open to applications from local council to help promote and support footfall, which has been obliterated since that event last year?
Minister.
Well, the High Street Task Force, which is responsible for a lot of these matters, is led by another department. The Department of Economy have a contribution to that. And of course, we're keen to work with all departments in ensuring that the High Street, and particularly in areas that have been damaged, unexpectedly damaged, High Streets are struggling in general in terms of the economic conditions we have. But in Newry and Downpatrick in particular, they have received a very serious blow last autumn. So while my primary focus in relation to that is to make sure the councils deliver out the funding support for those affected by the flooding, I think in a broader sense, in terms of that work of the High Street Task Force, all of the departments in the executive as a whole have a duty to try and understand the challenges facing our high streets and try and provide support across departments wherever we can do that.
Call Mr. David Brooks. Minister.
I agree that our universities and colleges should work collaboratively together to deliver best outcomes for learners. It's also important to recognise that schools and community-based providers play an important role in ensuring a joined-up and effective education sector. In order to ensure that colleges and universities in particular work together in a complementary and not a competitive manner, the Tertiary Education Senior Leaders Forum has been established. This provides a place for senior leaders from my department, Department of Education, further education colleges and higher education institutions to come together to consider strategic matters of common interest, including qualifications. The core purpose of the forum is to foster greater collaboration between all those involved in education, post-compulsory school age, and to help move towards a more coherent tertiary education sector.
David Brooks for supplementary.
Thank the Minister for his answer, and I was glad to hear more about that at the concurrent meeting of the Economy and Education Committees last week. But would you agree with me that it is important that while our universities offer a range of excellent courses, that by incurring into courses that would have traditionally been served by our colleges, they don't undermine our excellent FE sector, which is vitally important to our economy as well?
Minister.
I think there may be a perception that universities are moving into that space at the expense of colleges. I think there's been some work done to establish that that's not necessarily the case. We do need to make sure and that in a system where we have very little money to spend, and that's why his reference to the work between ourselves and the Department of Education across all these matters is important, that we actually use the resources we have to as best as we possibly can. So that's responsibility on us as executive ministers to make sure that the system works for education, not just for the young people, but in terms of the public finances required to run it, works as seamlessly as possible, and we don't get duplication, we don't get contradiction. What we want is the most complementary scheme system possible, and that's why forums such as this are important. That the joint work done by both departments is very important in relation to that. There is a drop off, I'm told, advised that we have the lowest numbers of that age cohort since about the 1950s, so that could explain some of the drop off in college numbers, but nevertheless we have a very good college estate, we have a very good further education sector. I want to see it fully utilised. We have a real challenge in terms of getting people and skills into the workforce, and the college sector is vital in terms of delivering in relation to that. So I've had discussions with them in this regard, and I do want to make sure that in our joint work with the Education Department and in the work of that forum, that we make sure that the entire system works in a complementary fashion rather than a competitive one.
Call David Honeyford.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker, and again I'm a voice to welcome the Minister back, and I wish him good health moving forward. But could you give us an update just on the reform of the delivery of further education as we move forward?
Minister.
Well, the first priority when I came into office was to ensure that we got the lecturers' pay issues resolved, and I'm glad that has been able to be done. I have had a meeting with the principals from the colleges, and we will continue to work, bring that work in terms of reform forward. We want to make sure that we have a system that actually, recognises the unique product that each of the colleges have, recognises their own autonomy in that and the communities that they serve in a regional way right across the north, but also make sure that it is coherent and cohesive, and it actually tackles some of the big issues that we have identified as problems within the economy, and primarily the issue of skills, getting young people into education, offering pathways for people who have been out of either the education or the training system back into it. The colleges are uniquely placed to do that, and as I said in the previous answer, they have a very good estate, a very good system. We want to make sure that it is fully utilised. It's not currently fully utilised, so I think in any idea of reform that we want to bring to the fore is how we fully utilise that, how we make sure the colleges act at their most efficient and deliver for the economy and deliver for society here.
Philip Brett for supplementary.
Well, Deputy Speaker, and on behalf of myself and the Committee Minister, can I welcome you back to office? Can I welcome your commitment to the FE sector and highlight the point that you made that it's important that the FE sector and its campuses serve the communities in which they are located? Could the Minister then outline in his recent discussion with principals of the colleges, has he raised the importance of the Castlereagh campus of Belfast Met, something that my East Belfast colleagues continue to champion?
Well, I had, at the joint meeting I did with them, we didn't get down to the actual individual campuses, but I have had discussions. I met your party leader in relation to the Castlereagh one. I've had correspondence and issues raised with me with other elected representatives as well. I had the pleasure of visiting the college in your own constituency as well, and chatting to the principal and senior staff there. So there is a recognition that we have, we want to make sure that the system works very well. There's a good offering there. There are very good facilities, they're very well located. We have resolved, and I hope we continue to work in terms of enhancing the role and the support for the people who work in that system, both in delivery of teaching but also throughout that system, to make sure that we have, if you like, a happy campus in that regard, and then to focus on the areas that we have outlined as priorities for the Department of the Economy, particularly in terms of the area of skills and training. So I have no doubt there will be individual issues arise in terms of members of the pieces of the estate within various colleges, and we want to work through that, but we need a cohesive forum. We need the support for the colleges themselves to get forward with the work that they're doing. And I'm very happy to talk to them about those individual areas of question marks around some parts of the campuses that I have.
Nick Matheson for supplementary.
Principal Deputy Speaker, can the Minister confirm when he will respond to the recommendations from the Independent Review of Education in relation to FE and HE?
Minister.
Well, as I say, the primary, I suppose, focus we had when I came into office was to try and make sure that we got as I think across nearly all of the departments, was trying to make sure we got the public pay sector issues resolved. I think by and large with the exception, I understand that there was hopefully some progress in relation to schools over this week, but those issues have been resolved. I've met with the colleges themselves. I've talked to them about that issue of reform and the report that was being done into them. And we intend to bring that work forward now. But what we want to do is try and make sure, as I say, right across, so it's not individual, it's not an isolated piece of work, if you like. We have an education system. We have a joint responsibility with the 14 to 19 cohort, but there's responsibility on either side of that as well. I want to make sure that the system we have is as coherent and cohesive as possible, that it serves all of the community, and that it also serves our economic needs in the time ahead.
Call Doug Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question 10, please.
Minister.
I have no intention of increasing tuition fees, given that our students already face considerable cost of living pressures and many take on significant debt to access higher education. I am committed to working with the higher education sector to embed sustainable funding arrangements that enable the sector to thrive and create more opportunities for our students.
Doug Beattie for supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Minister, and I'm glad he's made a recovery and he's back with us today. University application numbers are due to rise by 20% by 2030. Could I ask the Minister what is his plans to be able to increase those student numbers?
Minister.
Yes, and I think that what we want to do is to try and see, and I've stated that as a desired outcome. The simple question that the burden of that falls on the students, I think is unfair, because we are in a cost of living crisis. We are putting thousands and thousands of young people into significant debt just to go through higher education. So I have committed to working with our institutions to try and see other ways where we can increase the numbers without placing that burden directly on students. Of course, if we had more money in the system, if we had a better settlement in terms of our public finances, then there would be more opportunities for supporting more places. But my focus is trying to find ways to creatively work with the educational institutions themselves to try and find a way to grow that number and to make sure that as many young people as want to stay in, and there are people who want to leave these shores to go to other places for a university experience, but as many of those who want to stay then have an ability to stay there in the time ahead.
Padraig Delargy for supplementary.
Thank the Minister for his answer so far. And will the Minister ensure that the Mason cap will not impact the expansion of McGee?
Minister.
Well, the executive parties made a commitment back under a decade new approach to get the numbers in McGee up to 10,000, and that is the plan that I intend to operate to. We have discussed with the universities themselves and discussed in very recent times with officials just since I've come back about ways that we can work to ensure that those numbers increase, and that is clearly going to be a focus. It's an executive commitment. It's my responsibility to deliver on it, and that's what I intend to do.
Sean Mulholland for supplementary.
Thank you and welcome back, Minister. Can the Minister give us a timeline for the review of student support in terms of when it will be completed and when any recommendations can be made?
Well, we've just got the budgets and we'll have to obviously analyse what we have. We don't have as much as we would have wanted. We recognise that, and every department's in the same position. I'm sure heard some of them already today. So we don't have the funds that we would like, but nonetheless we will continue to provide support for students, and we did manage to find funding in year to supplement that support. So I am currently analysing how I can spread that limited budget that I have into the various areas of the department, and equality testing that as well. So once I have that done, I'll be able to make an announcement as to how much support will go in that, and when following that then will be some advice on how people can access that support.
Matthew O'Toole.
Minister, it's good to have you back. I agree with you that we don't want to see any extra burden on hard-pressed students. It's also the case that we export an entire university's worth of our young people from these shores every year. Many of them want to go, but too many of them don't want to go, and they don't come back. It's a structural problem in our economy. We've heard a lot about task forces, study groups, but will there be specific action in the programme for government for how we increase student places in this society? Will it be in the PFG?
Well, the easiest way we would have to do that is to have more money to be able to do that. If he agrees with me in that it's unfair to place the burden on that on young people themselves who already get themselves in significant debt just for the benefit of access and higher education. So the easiest thing would be to increase the funding that we have available. Of course, that's a different conversation with the government in London. But certainly I look forward to seeing the programme for government being delivered very, very soon. I'm not of the view that PERDA should apply in the way it has been applied to many things. I would like to see it advanced more quickly than that, and we will ensure the Executive have a commitment, a collective commitment to growing the economy, and increasing the number of people who access further and higher education institutions and skills and who remain here is surely a very strong way to continue to grow our economy.
Ciara Ferguson.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. Question 8.
It's definitely 11, Minister.
I established the Independent Task Force in March under the leadership of Stephen Kelly and Nicola Skelly. The group has met twice, receiving presentations from Ulster University as well as Derry City and Strabane District Council. Local business leaders also led a task force discussion on the future skills needs in the North West. The next task force meeting takes place this Wednesday and will be attended by representatives of the local community as well as the Special Envoy for Economic Affairs, Joe Kennedy. The expansion of the McGee campus to 10,000 students was a commitment in New Decade, New Approach and is key to promoting regional balance in line with my own economic plans. As Minister, I intend to see this commitment delivered.
Ciara Ferguson for supplementary.
Thank you for your answer thus far. Minister, could I ask what additional funding has the Department allocated to McGee for the expansion for 24-25?
A total funding package of £152 million has already been committed for the expansion of McGee. This includes previously announced funding of the £38 million from the Shared Island Fund for a new teaching block, city deals and Inclusive Future Fund, as well as investment from the university's own reserves. For the next financial year, the Department includes up to £4.1 million resource and up to £14.7 million capital for McGee expansion activities.
Sinead McLaughlin.
Thank you, Minister, for your answer so far. Obviously, the task force is going to be bringing a paper in September. Now, the funds that are in place at the moment are not taken into consideration, perhaps recommendations coming through from the task force. Are you confident that you will have money to put towards that expansion?
Minister.
Well, what we're currently doing is engaging with the UU, and of course the task force will have an oversight in relation to that and an input in relation to that for a more detailed plan on the allocation of that funding. This will be made available in the financial year to take forward opportunities to expand McGee campus by developing the infrastructure and increasing the student numbers. The task force, as you quite rightly say, will come forward with a plan in September. They're very much aware of the figures that we've been talking about here. If they have a different approach, I am very, very happy to listen to that and to try and secure the additional funding. She will recognise, as I'm sure all, particularly members of the committee, will recognise the limitations on the funding that we had. But nonetheless, the commitment remains for the expansion of McGee. I see it as an executive priority and I see it as my duty to deliver on that.
Call Tom Buchanan. Minister.
Provision of high-quality, affordable childcare is a priority for the Executive. On the 23rd of May, the Education Minister outlined a package of measures for early learning and childcare that have been agreed by the Executive. One element of this package is a targeted business support scheme for childcare providers to assist those in financial difficulty and in areas where the demand for childcare exceeds supply. The Executive has initially earmarked £2 million for this purpose. Invest NI has nominated an official to work with my officials and the Department of Education on the design of the scheme. The involvement of my department and Invest NI will be important to ensure alignment with other businesses, support interventions and compliance with state subsidy requirements.
Tom Buchanan for supplementary.
For his response, the Minister will know the importance of the childcare sector within our communities, and can the Minister give some indication if this business support scheme will be a one-off or will it be on a recurrent basis?
Quick response, Minister.
Well, the clear intention of the Executive is to provide affordable childcare. Not only is that a benefit to families and individuals and communities, there's also a benefit to the economy to allow people to return to work. So that isn't a one-off commitment, that is a over the years commitment that the Executive have made, and I would sincerely hope that once we get these schemes started, then we will follow that through with the necessary funding to make sure that people can continue to avail of affordable childcare.
Perfect timing. So that ends the period for listed questions. We're now going to move on to 15 minutes of topical questions. Questions 2 and 10 have been withdrawn, and I call Sinead McLaughlin.
Minister, we're really looking forward to scrutinising the Subregional Economic Action Plan to be published in September. Will you ensure that the objectives and the actions of this plan do not solely relate to Invest NI?
Minister.
No, the intention is to make sure, in terms of sub-regional action plans, that we get all of the actors in each area to come together to identify the needs of that area. Some of that may be Invest NI work, but some of it may be Department of Economy work, but some of it may be other departments. What we want to ensure is that local areas get some resource, get the necessary structures in place, and find their voice in order to represent the interests, economic interests of those regions to the centre, where I would anticipate that the centre will record accordingly to the needs that have been identified. So it's clearly a matter of work which is about democratising local economic input and ensuring that those voices are very clearly heard and that there is resource to match the requirements in each area.
Sinead McLaughlin for supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for that answer. And I know you appreciate that a function in Invest NI is not regional balance, and it is much wider remit than that. And it's not just your department; it's other departments that have to come in beside you and with you and commit with you money and resources in order to really deliver regional balance that is deep and meaningful and will have good outcomes, and I welcome your commitment to that. Rather than asking you another question, I know that this is an ongoing issue that needs to be resolved quickly within this mandate.
I call William Mervyn.
Can I ask the Minister what means or what measures he will take to reduce the levels of young people in UNMA who are not in education, employment or training?
Minister. Pick up the question.
So, sorry.
Can I ask the Minister what measures he would take to reduce the level of young people in UNMA who are not in education, training or employment?
Minister.
I recognise that one of the greatest challenges we have are getting particularly people who have, if you like, not fallen through the system back into training and education. And previously, that funding to support those programmes, and I'm sure he's aware, as I am in our own constituency, of many groups that work in this area very effectively. Funding for that was done through the European funding that we had. That funding was ended with Brexit and was not replaced by the government in London. So the department has been trying to find ways to supplement that. Some of those groups did receive levelling up or shared prosperity funding, but that again is coming to a cliff edge in the very near future. So we want to try and ensure that the groups that are out there assisting young people to come back into the education system or to achieve necessary skills or indeed even just confidence in themselves and going out to work are supported in doing that. And that is a challenge because that funding has been lost to us. But we will continue to work with the departments in London to try and ensure that we get better and more reliable access to some of that funding for shared prosperity and levelling up, so we can give the certainty to those groups and all those young people who are in need of support in education and training.
Mervyn for supplementary.
I thank the Minister for his response. Would the Minister accept that recent figures show that 14,000 16 to 24-year-olds in Northern Ireland are not in employment, training or education? Does he accept those numbers are too high?
Minister.
Yes, I think they are. And so, you know, when many of us, and I've been here for many years as he has, pride ourselves on having a world-class education system, it's world-class for those who it works for. And unfortunately, there are far too many people who it doesn't work for. So we, in a situation where we now have, where we have almost full employment but a high level of economic inactivity, that's clearly the area that we have to ensure gets some attention. And so I'd like to see those numbers reduced. I would like to see young people, particularly from areas of deprivation, be they rural or urban, having the opportunities to upskill, to get education, to find their way in the workforce, to get decent paid jobs and a sense of fulfilment out of the work that they get in order to be living better lives for themselves. So I think that is a challenge for all of us, not just to support the economy, to support those young people themselves.
Connie Egan.
Madam Principal Deputy Speaker, Minister, I welcome you back to the Assembly Chamber. Can I please ask what work your department is doing to support part-time learners in both further and higher education?
Minister.
Well, there are a range of support packages for people in those areas. I think what we have to do is, I suppose, that we take our lead from the colleges and the universities themselves in regard to the numbers that we have. It's a programme. I suppose it's hard to, like all these kind of anticipatory programmes, to see what the needs will be over the course of the year, and we do manage generally over the course of the year to supplement the funding for that. So just a month or two ago we were able to announce an additional amount of money into student hardship support schemes to try and ensure people can access that. It's a little bit like the issue around jobs and training and skills. We have to make part-time courses and part-time entry into workforce available to people. Because it's a big challenge for people to go from completely reliant on a benefits system or a welfare system to go immediately back into education, or completely being responsible for caring roles and responsibilities in their own home, be that children or be it others in their own homes, to go back full-time into training or education. So I think we all have to understand accessibility issues, and that means that part-time courses need to be available and accessible to people, and they need to be supported in entering into those. And similarly, in the world of work, we need to ensure that employers are operating part-time accessible entry levels into work as well. So while we don't have, and we're currently working out what our budget will allow us to do for the year ahead, it is something that we do provide support to, and we'll provide as much as we can into the future.
Connie Egan for supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Conscious you did mention this in your answer, but I'm wondering specifically about support that your department can provide for people with disabilities, caring responsibilities or long-term illnesses on accessing part-time learning courses.
Minister.
Well, I'm very happy to work with the colleges and the universities themselves to make sure that they are doing all they can to allow people to come into education. So they design some of the facilities around their courses that they operate, but they have to be conscious that the people who are furthest from our education system and our employment are people who suffer from illnesses or disabilities, and they're often the people who end up in the worst elements of work or the worst conditions of work, and that's why I intend to bring a Good Jobs Bill to the Assembly over the course of this mandate, which will try and address some of those issues. But I absolutely accept that in the first instance it's access to training that is required for people, and I will continue to work with the colleges and the universities to make sure they understand they need to make that as accessible as possible.
Call Nicola Brogan.
Can the Minister provide an update on the closure of the RHI scheme as agreed as part of the NDNA agreement? Littlehill.
I've been attempting to secure executive agreement on the future of RHI since the 4th of April. However, to date it has not been allowed onto the executive agenda. This is delaying participants from receiving an uplift in their tariff. It also puts at risk an orderly closure to the scheme, as Ofgem has now provided a final termination notice. Ofgem will only continue to administer delivery of the scheme with an absolute backstop of the 30th of April 2026. So I hope the Executive is allowed to discuss and decide upon these issues so participants can receive appropriate payments and so we can close the scheme in an orderly manner in line with the agreed executive priority.
Nicola Brogan for supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for that answer. Minister, in closing the scheme, will you ensure that participants are fairly compensated?
Well, that is the plan, but if we can't get, of course from the court rulings that there was a sense that they wanted to ensure that people were treated fairly, and many people entered this scheme on the basis of a genuine attempt to avail of a support that was there for them. So we have to ensure that people are treated fairly, but we have to get to a stage where the Executive agrees what we're going to do about this. This is not a problem that I created, this is a problem I inherited. I'm trying to bring, as was agreed, some degree of closure to that. It's frustrating for me that we can't even get a discussion in the Executive on it, and I would urge those who have been holding us up to date to allow the Executive to deal with this problem so we can move on in line with the views of the Court during that hearing.
Paul Steve Aiken.
And again, I welcome you back to your rightful place, being here as well. Declaration of interest, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker. I am the oncoming chair of the All-Party Group in Aerospace, Defence and Space. It sounds like it's a good title, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Minister, you'll be very aware that the aerospace sector in Northern Ireland is a growing sector and faces some challenges, not least in the skills agenda and the rest of it. Could the Minister outline to me what degree of priority he expects InvestNI to put into the aerospace, defence and space sectors as we go forward, bearing in mind the growth that is likely to be over the next couple of years in Northern Ireland?
Minister.
Yeah, well, I think it's incumbent on Invest and on the department to identify areas of priority and particularly clusters, and he's quite right in that there is a growing cluster, some big players in it, but quite a lot of small and medium enterprises involved in that sector that are advancing. It touches on the areas of good jobs, it touches on the area of productivity, because there's quite a lot of innovation in that sector and quite a lot of growth. And so it is in line with the priorities that I have set within the department, and also it offers regional balances. Quite a lot of these firms are scattered right across the north. So, of course, yes, all of us operate within a limited budgetary framework, including Invest NI, but I think what we have tried to do is identify sectors where there are opportunities for growth, and I would concur with his view that there are clearly opportunities for growth in this sector.
Steve Aiken for supplementary.
That as well. Could the Minister therefore, when he's looking at his diary, commit to coming to Farnborough to the International Air Show, where Northern Ireland will be highlighting its wares at a particular series of events? And I think it would be excellent if the Minister was able to find himself there.
Well, I get invited to quite a lot of events, as I'm sure the member would be aware, so it's a question of trying to juggle the diary and to make sure that I can go to as many as I possibly can, while also retaining the focus on the work that I need to do within the department. So I'm always content to consider any invitations which come to me to make sure that I'm doing my best to support all of our businesses right across the north.
Call on you, Murphy.
And I'd like to thank the Minister for his answers thus far. Minister, could you provide an update on the first meeting of the Social Enterprise Task Force?
The first meeting of the co-design group for social enterprise was on the 31st of May. I was able to attend it briefly myself, which I was pleased to do. The group are highly motivated to see strategic support for the sector and use the first meeting as an opportunity to share their experience and wealth of knowledge. There was an understanding that the focus should be on trading, scaling and supply chain collaboration. These objectives will work towards making social enterprises more sustainable without reliance on funding and allowing the sector to meet their expectations of social value. It was noted there's already work being done to support the sector, but it is fragmented, making it difficult for social enterprises to access. So the next step will be to identify potential barriers and what current supports are available. This exercise will show gaps in areas where we can implement short-term actions and ensure there's no duplication. Officials agreed to bring a draft paper to the next meeting on the 27th of June.
And I'd like to thank the Minister for his answer. Minister, could you also provide us on the group set up by the department to develop the credit union movement?
Yeah, the meeting took place a couple of weeks ago when my colleague Tertiary was at the helm in the Department for the Economy, and the group, it was important to come together to see the opportunities that they have to support our own economic plans of supporting regional balance and creating good jobs, increasing productivity and tackling issues around net zero. The Irish League of Credit Unions have their own manifesto, and that was in many ways set the context for the working group, but the department's work does not need to be limited to that, and we requested, my colleague had requested, and that will follow through with myself, that officials provide regular updates from the working group that has been established.
Robin Swan's not in his place. I call John Blair.
Speaker, and I join with others in welcoming the Minister back and wishing him well. And I'd like to ask also, if we could, if the Minister could update us on the work of the Green Energy Skills Industry Reference Group. Minister.
The issue of skills, as we've said many times here, is a huge one for us. The big attraction, particularly for foreign investors to here, are our people and our skills, and the biggest challenge we currently have is in doing that. So there is a range of engagement going across a lot of sectors: Skills Advisory Council, the reference group that the report that came to us from Matrix as well, talking about skills and future skills that are required, and we continue to do that engagement across the department and with the various institutions that are working on providing that, including business itself. The challenge for us is the lack of funding that we have in order to put support into skills programmes, but we intend to work with all of those advocates in that area to try and work as best we can to provide the necessary level for our people.
Very quick supplementary, John.
Principal Deputy Speaker, with that in mind, could the deadline of September 2024 for the Green Skills Action Plan be brought forward, given the urgent nature of the plan and also this issue?
Yes, I think what we have to do is take account of, we have several reports from different groups. We've had a lot of engagement over the last period of time in relation to that. The big challenge we have is trying to find the resource from the department to match the ambition that there is. But there have been good work in terms of examples of good practice. For instance, the Mid-Ulster clustering, where the manufacturing sector, they're going to engage with the colleges, the schools themselves to ensure that their focus is there. So what we need to do is that everybody who's in the area of skills, be that schools, colleges, education, the department, the private sector itself, and all of us who have an interest, the groups who get funded through various programmes for assisting young people, are all complementing each other and focused in the same area, rather than trying to trip over each other or step on each other's toes. We want to make sure that the limited amount of funding we have goes as far as it possibly can to try and support that area of work.
That ends questions to the Minister for Economy. Just take your ease for one moment.